This podcast is a member of the Place to Be Nation family. Visit us at placetobenation.com, the only place to be in your pop culture world.
Welcome back to the show. My name is Miranda, and I'm here with my good friend and company, Kelly, and we are, of course, ladies. How are you doing today, Kelly?
I'm good. How are you?
I think I said this before, and I never looked up the phrase, but I'm going to learn this Polish phrase that basically means when someone asks you, how are you? And you don't say good, fine, okay. It basically translates to, well, I'm not dead yet.
Yeah.
Which, is fine. It doesn't mean everybody's like, oh, is she living a rough life? No, it's just, have you seen the world? So, because of that, actually, Kelly and I today are going to be talking about all things comfy and cozy. Originally, we told you guys we were going to do cozy reads, and we absolutely are going to cover cozy reads today. But we decided to add in just a few more things to really zhuzh it up and fill our time. So, that's what we'll do. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about, which you and I kind of started talking about when we were recording, is you and I have found some funny things on TikTok lately. That like really been making us smile instead of like want to throw our phones across the room. I want you to tell me or tell everybody about the one that you were talking about first, because this is actually got brought up in reference to, like, we were talking about Gen Z slang. My son doesn't have as much of it as most Gen Z Americans because we don't live in America right now, but he has some. But you found some more.
Yeah, there was a couple that I've seen over the last few weeks where it's a parent, usually a mom, and their daughter, and like the mom is will say a word, and the daughter will give the equivalent Gen Z slang for said word. Which I found it made me chuckle. It was kind of funny because just kind of seeing how slang has continually evolved from generation to generation is interesting. And also, like, there's one where it's the dad, and the dad is using the Gen Z slang in front of his kids, and his kids are like cringing at the dad using, and that's even funnier. And it's like some people my age, 55, or at least for me, I would never try to use any slang that's outside of I guess my generation to an extent. I'm
trying to think. Did we really? Technically, the way they classify you and I, we're part of two different generations, but I think there's a lot of overlap in our two generations because
I think there is.
There's a lot. I really can't think of like major slang. Can you?
Not anything like. I grew up, I guess, when somebody would say something like, or what I will reply with if someone says, oh, well, I just got this new such and such, I'll go, oh, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, I did that. That's pretty cool.
Or I'll say, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's, again, it's like, I don't think I've ever really just used a lot of slangy words other than like I just used for examples. I
remember some that people tried to use, and I feel like they really didn't catch on. Like my mom, she kills me. My mom still tries to do the awesome sauce one.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, for some reason, coming out of her mouth, I do cringe like the Gen Z kids. I do kind of look at her and I'm like, what are we doing right
Right.
now? I don't, but I really can't. I mean, I know there were some in the 90s that you hear a lot in like Pauly Shore movies and stuff, but it's like they didn't last or they were only in like certain, like basically, let's just be honest, you and I were essentially nerds. Um, but there were, like, do you remember like the whole like tubular far out, man? Like, those
Yeah.
weren't really in my group of, I mean, I had some friends that said them because I was like friends with a lot of different friend groups. But I feel like that was in certain like
I
sex the right word. I don't know what word to use.
there
Like
in the yeah, and like I guess it might have been also regional where you're
yes,
from. Like
probably.
there
Oh,
like in the 70s there was like Valley Girl speak,
oh
like
yeah, oh yeah.
gag me
Even
with
in
a
the 90s.
spoon and things like that. Uh that yeah, I never used those you know, those phrases, but listening to like what
Probably.
the kids or what the kids what the Gen Z are using for words to describe this, that, and the other is kind of mind-boggling.
Oh
But
yeah,
also at the same
yes.
time, it's interesting for me. It's like, well, this is theirs. This belongs to them, and
Yeah, I mean
kind of
yes.
will follow them to some degree. Some of the words will fall off and won't get used anymore, and others may endure the test and be a part of their language or the way that they talk.
There's one though I
You
hope
know,
dies entirely. And I don't even understand it. I've even asked Caden and he's like, I don't get that one, I don't use it. Skibbity toilet?
yeah, I don't think I when I heard that I started going and looking up to see if I could find the meaning, and I don't really think there is a meaning,
I
other
can't
that
yeah,
maybe that's bad. That the best way to kind of put a description to
yeah.
it is that you know it means this is bad or that's bad, I guess.
I guess
Uh,
I don't know. One of my really close friends is actually she's my cousin's husband, so she'd be my cousin in marriage. And their child is a little bit younger than Kaden, one of their children, and she's constantly saying like, "Hey Miranda," and she'll give me this like slang word, and I'm like, I don't I don't know what that is. Them? Like, I have no clue. Like yesterday, she asked me if I was Sigma, and I was like, oh,
I think sigma means like you're. I want to say it's almost like alpha, like
yeah,
you're good. It's a good reference.
yeah.
It's nothing that I wouldn't feel comfortable. Like I said, you know,
I would,
I would be, I wouldn't be able, I would be too, I guess, embarrassed to try to use, other than maybe being like a dad and joking, but no
or
way
like
seriously.
how you used to use yeet.
What was that? You
You when you used to use yeet. Me and
eat,
Kaden.
eat?
You
Yeah,
know how much I hate it.
yeah.
Oh.
I don't,
Funny, like as a funny thing.
right.
Some of these, I just looked up a list of them. Some of them, I'm like, I've never. Some of these, I'm like, wait, I've heard people say those like for years. Those are.
Some of them I understand, like Riz, like that person's got Riz,
I need to
charisma.
explain the
I
first time because I was like, use it in a sentence. That's what I usually tell one of them when they get up to me. I'm like, use it in a sentence, so I can like figure it out. Don't just like yell the word at me. Like they're like cat, bet, and I'm like, use it in a sentence, please.
yeah, some of it I can kind of see where the root of the word comes from
Yeah.
or what it's meaning, but like no cap or, you know, I'm trying to figure out what the meaning was, where they came with no cap is, you know, whatever the meaning. And at that point, it's like I'm looking up, you know, what this word or what that word means. And it's mainly just to, when I come across or when there's something where that word is used, I can understand, okay, well, that's what it meant. That's what they're trying to say. It's by no means me trying to, you know,
I'm not trying to become one of you. I just want to understand.
My language or my words. I've got plenty of words. I'm like Trump. I've got all the best words. So, you know.
Actually, my favorite word maker in history was Bush.
Oh, yeah.
He made pretty great words. His were more aptly to be used.
It's sad that, you know, I would rather have, and I'm not a Republican or Democrat. I'm very independent, but I would almost rather have a Bush than a Trump any day of the week. Or what I mean by that is I would rather have like a normal Republican candidate than Trump, because Trump is not a normal Republican. He is a entity in and of himself, and his sycophants are also very just I can't.
I totally understand. But that is why we are going to focus on cozy and comfy things. And those videos were kind of cozy to us because they're really kind of funny, so they make you laugh, which is important. Kind of going along with the Gen Z words, my favorite thing that I've been sending in our little, we have like a group chat, Kelly and our friend Danny and I've been sending you guys the one of like really old guys having a Gen Zer write like something for their business for a TikTok. And it is the best thing ever. It's like a couple of museums, there's a bookstore. They are pure gold. I highly recommend you find those. Those made me laugh. Those were comfy. I really, it's a fun thing because it's so like that person should not be saying those things. That makes sense.
Yeah. So. Yeah, definitely. Like my coworker was telling me, he's got he's got his daughter, and she's all the time saying these things, and he doesn't understand. And a few weeks ago, he was talking about her, and he said she was using this word, and I can't remember the word in particular, but I knew what it meant, and I said, oh, well, that means this. And he turns and he's like, how do you know? I said, because I'm nosy, and when I hear a word or I hear something and I don't understand it, I will Google it and I will figure it out.
I'm nosy, and I'm on TikTok. Not that you need to know that.
Yeah, well, I mean, he knows, because I sit on TikTok sometimes in the truck when I'm, when it's too hot, or when like he can pick it up without me. I don't need to rake this particular pile because it doesn't need it, and
right.
But yeah, I don't know. I think that kind of stuff is interesting.
It is.
I think all the different generations have unique things about them, and I think the language that the generations use, I mean, especially if you go back and you watch like old movies from like the 50s and the 60s, and
The golly
uh,
gee. Oh
yeah,
boy.
and or uh, what was one that I learned this one from watching one of my favorite movies, which is The Stand, and they how is it? That's boss. I don't know
Oh,
what
I
that
had
means,
forgotten that one
but
totally.
they use that, and I was like, is that's a slang? What is? And I guess it means that's awesome, or that's good, or that's
I think it does.
and you think about it, it's like, why the word boss? Why did they, somebody came up with it and it stuck, and so when you look at the different generations and their slang words, I don't know. I like I said before, I just find it interesting.
It just reminded me. Do you remember that stupid billboard? I don't remember which company it was right now, but I think it was one of the like day spas or something that we had in town, and they had that billboard telling people to come get their eyebrows done. That they would eyebrows on fleek. It was
Yeah,
like at the
yeah,
one of the main intersections. Do you remember that billboard in
right.
Enterprise?
Yeah.
Oh my God, that used to kill me. And every time I drove by that in my head, I just kept thinking of that Mean Girls quote where she's like, "Stop trying to make fetch happen. It's not gonna happen."
I remember seeing that billboard and hearing, on fleek and as a reference for
I feel
something.
like that
And
one died really quickly, to be
but
honest.
I remember hearing Julian use it a couple of times here at the house. And I
He's a
just got,
lot younger than both of us,
oh
so
yeah,
that
yeah,
makes
yeah, yeah.
sense.
I
But yeah,
mean, I mean,
no offense,
Julian was
Julian. We love you.
Julian, yeah, Julian was one to use the slang.
He was up on the
Or
slang for sure.
yeah, I think like I don't remember Blake using a lot of slang very much,
No,
but
no.
Julian did, and I always kind of chuckled to myself whenever I heard him use it because, I mean, it sounded perfectly fine coming from him. But again, like I've said before, I won't use anything outside my wheelhouse that was, from my generation or maybe, the early 2000s. Uh, but yeah, it's funny hearing others use their slang, which is appropriate for their generation. But yeah, that billboard used to make me cringe.
Oh my
I was
God, it
like,
was
I
horrible.
knew definitely somebody from that or a younger generation came up with that, or either they were told by somebody they were using a more what they would think hip language to for their marketing.
Yeah, I
And
guess.
I don't know if that's always the best in a way, because like I think that's one of the reasons, like when you're trying to appeal to somebody from a younger generation, trying to use their lingo or you trying to be or to emulate them in any way is cringe. And
I would think they would say that too, because
yeah,
they
yeah,
actually also, like you and I, our generations use the word cringe, but they do as well. So I think they would definitely be like, ugh, cringe. You know?
yeah. Like even the word cringe is not from my generation, but I think it's more of an appropriate word for me to use because it's very much in our language.
Yeah,
It's kind of become part of the lexicon of
that's
like,
actually what you would do if you
right.
heard someone. You would literally cringe.
And that's, whenever, like when my coworker makes some sort of inappropriate comment, because he knows, not trying to be an asshole, but he says things that's inappropriate because he knows it makes me uncomfortable. And my reference for that's like, you're being real cringe right now.
Yeah.
and and I mean, he's a good guy. He's a city worker. That's all I can say. And I'm probably in the minority when it comes to people working for the city that doesn't, walks a different path than everybody else does. So,
as someone who also works for the city inside a police department, I completely understand what you're trying to say.
I don't
not entirely fit in.
There's a lot of inappropriate people that work for the city, the state, sheriff's department, police department. And
I grew up in those too. So yeah.
And it's always like, wow, you're really like that.
Yeah.
And there's others like my coworker who is not in any way like that. He knows me and he likes to push buttons. He likes to be that annoying coworker that's like.
That's his way of saying he cares, which is some people would not be able to handle it all, and then other people are like, okay, that's just how they are.
Even my foreman, and it all started. I found out that the local GameStop, this was 2 years ago, was getting a shipment of PS5s in, and they were going to be. There was only getting 4 of them. And
those were hard to find.
Oh, yeah, believe me. And I was almost at a point I was about to pay a lot more for one than I ended up doing. But I found out, but they were coming in on Friday. And I found this out. I called by chance on a Thursday when I was at work. I was looking to find out when a game was going to be available. And then before I got off the phone with the employee, I just said, hey, do you happen to know when your next shipment of PS5s are coming in? And he said, oh, well, I mean, it's great that you asked. We're going to get in 4 tomorrow. And I said, really? And he was like, yeah, we're open at 10 o'clock. You got to be here, whoever, is in line, the first 4. And so I got off the phone with him and I called my supervisor and I said, hey, I got a favor, and you can say no. I understand. This is last minute. I said, but I would really like to have tomorrow off because, and I'll tell you why. I'm not going to try to, it's very important to me. The local GameStop's getting 4 PS5s in, and I want to be there to get one, to buy one. And he kind of chuckled. He said, for real? And I was like, yeah, for real. He said, all right, well, let me call John and see if John will work for you. It's fine with me. I that's fine. So I hang up with him and I'm sitting there thinking, John, you better work for me, man. You better. And he did. He came through. He called me back 10 minutes later and said, yep, you can be off tomorrow. And I was there at 6 o'clock in the morning and there were 3 other people ahead of me. So I made the 4th person there, and I sat there and chatted with those folks and got my PS5. And so it became a running joke, like anytime this new game was coming out or whatever, I was going to take that day off. I was going to call in. And so, and actually there was like when Final Fantasy 14, when it went live that Tuesday, I did call out, but I had let them know, hey, I'm going to be taking a vacation day Tuesday. And they were like, well, what game's dropping? I said, Final Fantasy 14. I gotta be there. And so that joke comes up all the time. Anytime I'm like called out or whatever, it's like, well, what game came out? What game came out? It's not always a game. You guys are, but
sometimes I need to see a doctor. Sometimes.
Yeah. I'm actually sick and need to see a doctor. So just chill with the what game came out. Believe me, I wish more games would come out,
Well, speaking of games, do you have any that you're playing that make you comfortable right
now? I'm doing stuff again. It's more like logging in, doing a few things on Final Fantasy, and I haven't. I've got to dump a lot of stuff off my PC and reinstall WoW so that I can see what's going on with that, because there is kind of a lull now. I've done a lot. I've already gotten a lot of the content completed for Final Fantasy right now. and so I've got a window to kind of look and see what WoW's doing. And but I was looking at the hard drive where all my games are, and I was like, oh my God, I've got so much crap in here that I'm not going to play anytime soon, that I can just go ahead and remove. So I'm probably going to do that this coming Wednesday. But there's a couple of, like, there's a new game from Atlas coming out called Metaphor something. I can't remember the other part of the title, but it comes out in October. And Atlas Atlas puts out some really good games. So
I don't think I've ever played an Atlas game.
Well, the main ones that I played were their Persona games, and
I've
been
okay.
playing.
Yeah, okay.
I've been playing those since the PS1. With the first Persona that came out.
What are they at now? Like 5 or
Persona 5 is the latest, and they've got. I read somewhere that Persona 6 is in the works. So
I think you're correct. I think I saw that somewhere as well. I didn't like Persona. I think 3. Yeah, I think it's 3 or 4 is the only one.
3 is my favorite. 2, or not 2, but 3 is my favorite. 4 is a runner-up, and 5's really good too. But I don't know, for some reason I think I have more of an emotional connection to 3 because that's when I lived back on Scott Drive, and my friend Chris was living with me at the time, and he would come into my room and sit in my computer chair and watch me play. And we it was a good time for us just to hang out, good memory. So, but those games are really fun, and there's been a lull since Final Fantasy Remake, which, the first part of this year was front loaded. We had a lot of really good games come out. And so, but since that, it's been kind of a stretch. Final Fantasy's Dawn Trail was the next big game to come out. I've been trying to find stuff for my Switch so I could take to work with me to find that are, and you're always sending me those little links for these cozy games.
Yes. I love cozy gaming. That's kind of the era I'm in right now, is like that cozy gaming era, I guess you'd say. So,
yeah. Those are, I like those too.
Well, we actually, Katie and I were having a conversation about it last night, and I think there's far more games that are considered, because I'm part of like a cozy gaming group on Facebook, and sometimes the games that people are like, oh, is this a cozy game? And people coming in being like, yeah, absolutely. I'm like, oh, well, I wouldn't. Okay, I didn't. Like, a lot of people actually consider Warcraft cozy, because they're like, it's all about how you play it. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense. Typically, the definition of cozy gaming is it usually has something to do where you're gathering items. There's usually not a lot of violence or absolutely no violence at all. There is violence in WoW. There's a lot of violence. But it's not like GTA violence or, I don't know, or Call of Duty violence or something like that.
Those are, those are good examples. Those probably some of the best examples is any shooter, and then any GTA game.
But I've been playing the new WoW expansion. I've done some with friends, but it's mainly if I do anything with friends, it's just dungeons. I've been actively just kind of playing by myself, which is what makes it like cozy to me. I do enjoy having people to play with. So like when you get it re-downloaded and get going, there are now things for those that don't know. If you've been gone from the game for a while, Horde and Alliance can now play together. So
does that mean, like, if I wanted to walk into Orgrimmar, I can just walk in?
No, we still can't do that.
Okay.
Still, each other's main cities are still off limits, but it's like we can run some dungeons together, raids, things like that.
I don't mind. I don't mind that. I kind of think that should be an aesthetic that kind of stays where it's at. You know,
Well, I mean, we've had all these expansions now where they're telling us we need to work together to heal Azeroth, right? So,
yeah,
like, if we have to work together, why can't we communicate with each other? Why are we still acting like?
I yeah, I think that if you're either going to go all the way or not, you know, it's like if you're going
Right.
to allow us to do all that, then sure, let us come into each other's cities. But
Mhm.
you know, if you're just going to dance around it, you know, I don't know. I'm like either go in all the way or don't do it because
I do
I don't,
understand that.
you know, I don't mind the fact that, you know, Horde and Alliance have their own stuff, and that may be one of the reasons they want the Horde to have their city, and that's fine, you know. But if you're going to open up this, you know, there's always the every expansion. There's always this piece of, well, you know, the Horde and Alliance have to do to, you know, we have to work together, and we have to, and that, like I said, I love that, you know, but it's always inevitable. Well, we go back to fighting again, you know.
Yeah.
It's like,
I'm hoping we don't for a little while because for a while we've been working together. So I like us to continue to work together, but still, I mean, still have our differences, right? And still
yeah,
snarky comments here and there. I'm okay with that. But I kind of like this whole, like, a couple of expansions of us working together. And I really hate Garrett and I hope it stays that way, you know? Like,
yeah,
it's nice. So that one, I've been considering that one cozy. Because again, you know, honestly, their music's pretty awesome too. And then I have been playing more Disney Dreamlight. I really enjoy that game. And Kaden got me into Cult of Lamb. That game is, you would probably also like that. So you're this little lamb trying to build your own cult and taking down like these gods that are trying to control you, so to speak. I think they're like heretics essentially.
yeah,
And you're trying to, so your cult, you have to like, you get to build your own little cult and place it how you want, and you have to keep them fed, and you have to like do little services. Sometimes you do rituals and sacrifices. It's funny. It is so funny. Kaden actually found this lady on YouTube or TikTok one that was like, "This is blasphemous. You could." She's like, "It is as a cult," and Kaden's like, "It literally says it on the cover. It's a cult." Like, and you get to name your own cult. So I named mine because, you know, Kaden is consistently asking me as a joke. It's like every day for like the past like 4 years, my son is like, "Can I start a cult?" My answer is always no. But now he got to in his game, and I named mine Followers of Wu. Yes, after the dog. So that was a lot of fun.
that's. I think I've seen that on when I've was looking through Steam and looking at games.
Yeah, it's on Switch, Steam, Xbox. Pretty sure it's on PlayStation. I have mine on Xbox, so does he. But I really like that. And then I also am addicted to the Monopoly Go game on mobile.
I never thought that I would be. I do have a little bit of a new. I hate to say the word addiction, but
interest.
I have a mobile game that I started playing that kind of has become. And I really poo-pooed on mobile games for a long time, and that's fine. I mean, people, you know, I come around. I'm like, I understand. People like mobile games. Yeah, and yeah, I can change mine too. So I mean, I used to poo-poo on mobile games, but I don't anymore because now I'm playing one for almost 6 months now, and it's called Marvel Snap, and it's a card game.
Yeah, I think Jerry plays that actually.
I started playing it at work before before we go out and get in the truck, or when, you know, at the end of the day when we're waiting to go home, I've got 45 minutes to sit in the break room and I can only read so much or whatever. So I started playing this game just as that, but I became more and more like involved, maybe not addicted. I have spent some money on it, so I'm not, uh,
I still don't think that's like a major addiction. I think the bad ones are like I have a friend that plays a mobile game that he got kicked out of a guild because he wasn't spending money weekly. And he was like,
yeah,
yeah, I'm not
yeah,
here for that. Like,
yeah, it's like they just added these things called alliances where you can join with a bunch of other players, and all the stuff that you do, like alliance wise, like if you do these bounties and you do these things, you accumulate points for the alliance, and everybody gets, to benefit from that. And I joined one just, for the hell of it, and everybody seems to contribute quite a bit. So I mean, but I don't, that's not, it's not the whole version. I mean, I want to play to get cards and to level up my cards and stuff like that, but it's not traditional. Like you can throw money at it if you want to try to get cards, and it's all kind of randomized what cards you get, and but the incentive is to just play the game, and you can get these things without spending any money. Spending money kind of gets you like variance, and maybe like what I spend my money on is every month they have like a new arc, and they introduce cards, and they introduce, so if
it's
you
almost like purchasing an expansion, really.
Yeah, it is. It's like, you spend $10 and you now when you level, up the game, your card level or whatever, you're going to open or get these bonus experience things and gold. You're also going to get like variant cards and stuff like that. And you could get that by yourself if you didn't, but it takes a lot longer to get. So I'm like, $10, that's
right. Not a big deal.
I'll skip a meal or whatever, or getting, buying lunch, it's
right,
like
buying
that.
Out, not like sorry.
I'm
you know what I meant though.
Yeah. I mean, I could do with skipping a meal. It's not good. I mean, especially with me being on this Manjaro, my appetites, I don't have an appetite anymore. I mean, I feel full all the time, so I have to remember to drink water and eat, sometimes, which I'm good at staying on that, but like my grocery bill has kind of come down because I'm not, I am eating, but it's like I'm not snacking, I guess is the best word, is I'm not snacking. I eat at my appropriate times, but I don't,
Yeah. It's to kind of keep diabetic blood sugars in check, basically, like to keep you from overeating or whatever.
My blood sugar's been pretty decent. I've dropped a pant size. I've been on it for a few months, and I've dropped a pant size, and that's good. And
I've heard great things about it. My mother-in-law's on it for the same reasons.
Blood sugar wise, my blood sugar is a lot better, and you drop enough weight, you can kind of jumpstart your metabolism back to where it should be, and you don't have to be on the meds anymore. But my doctor just wanted me to try it. He was like, I want to get you off some of these older meds and get you some, something new. And my insurance pays everything except, my copay or whatever it is like $56 a month, which that's
actually really good.
That is really good compared to like when I first asked about this a year or so ago, I guess, when this medicine came, or this type of medicine came out. I took the prescription up there, and they all know me at this pharmacy, and she looked at the prescription and she said, let me check. And she said, "Oh, your insurance won't cover this." And I said, "Well, how much is it?" She goes, "You don't want to know." And I was like, "Well, now I want to know." And she was like, "It's $500." And I was like, "Yeah, no, we're good."
But now think of all the people that are going and getting a doctor to prescribe this to them just simply for weight loss.
For weight loss,
they're
yeah.
paying for it. I mean,
I
I guess to each their own, but whew.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like taking medicine, period. I mean, I do have to take meds now since I had my heart attack. I've got to take blood pressure and
Right.
you know, and stuff for being type 2. I definitely don't like it. I mean, if I get a headache or if I get, I'm not quick to go grab some Tylenol.
You're not.
I'm just going to go lay down and just cool off. That's normally what it is. I get overheated and I get a headache. So, but yeah, I don't like taking medicine. And that was go ahead.
I said I don't blame you. Sorry.
Yeah, you're fine. I don't think anybody really likes to take, medicine. Now, if I actually get sick, have a fever, blah, 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 I will, take Tylenol, drink plenty of fluids. If I have if I feel a little nauseated, I'll, go get some Sprite or get some ginger ale or something and just kind of homeschool it. If it lasts longer than a few days, then, I'll say, okay, well, maybe I need to go see the doctor,
right.
Or I'll call my sister and say, hey, well, I used to do the same thing when my mom was still alive. When I moved out, there were several times I would call her and go, hey, I've got this symptom. And she was like, oh, that's you're, and she'd kind of tell me what, it's like you probably got some sort of hay fever or your allergies are acting up and they can actually cause you to have cold symptoms and maybe even, you could have a slight cold and, take this and
I know moms aren't doctors, but I will say the majority of mothers, even if they've only got like one kid, if their kid is a little bit, I wouldn't say I'm not saying you can't be a young mother, but I feel like there's just certain things that somebody's like, oh, nope, I know what that is, because you just simply had to deal with it, because school crud is a thing. So your mom has probably very much seen this multiple times.
Well, I wasn't like a sickly kid, but I had allergies really, really bad. And so growing up was, I would go see the doctor at least once or twice a year, usually during, bad times for pollen and stuff like that. So, I mean, and I wasn't, and I really didn't like taking medicine at a young age either, but, it was like I would start taking it and I would be like, well, I feel better now. I don't need to take it. It was like, no, take the whole thing, take it until it's gone.
Take all of it. Yep.
You don't want to relapse. And so, I actually had a relapse I think when I had the flu, the last time I had the flu, which was quite a long time ago. And that was even when you get over the flu and then it spikes up again, it's even worse the second time. So
you're like, I feel better. And then you're like, oh God, no, I don't.
No, I was out for almost 2 weeks and, actually that wasn't the last time. The last time I was really, really sick was when I had gotten that virus back 96, 97. And that was the virus that took me out for a week. It also cured me from wanting to smoke anymore. So I basically
quit. Guess if something good came out of it.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'd been trying to quit smoking. I would only smoke for maybe 5 or 6 years. It was just a horrible habit I picked up when I had started drinking, which a lot of times that kind of goes hand in hand with people.
You hear a lot of people say that actually.
yeah, it's kind of a common trait and something that I would never have thought that I would ever do because like my parents, I grew up with two parents that smoked. You know, when we went anywhere, it was like, crack the window, please. I don't want to die. And my
Mm-hmm.
parents did. I mean, my parents weren't, horrible about it, but they would crack their window. The smell of smoke was something that I'd gotten used to, didn't realize, uh, until I moved out really that, but then I started smoking a couple of years after I moved out and it just kind of, but that virus knocked it out of me. I remember getting in the truck that Friday to go have lunch at Larry's with Chris Andrews, and Chris Andrews smokes, and I remember getting in his truck and was like, and then realizing I hadn't smoked the entire week because I'd been laid out, but I didn't want to. And I looked at Chris and was like, I'm cured. And he said, of what? I said, I don't want to smoke anymore. I'm not a smoker. And he kind of laughed. He goes, your virus did that? I was like, yeah, I am extremely happy right now and hungry. Let's go. Because I hadn't eaten much that entire week.
Oh, for sure.
So, but yeah, it was good.
Well, that's actually bringing up old memories is also extremely cozy. So thank you for sharing those with us. We had some books we were going to talk about. Originally, that was like our main bulk plan. We're discussing books. I'm a huge reader. You are a reader as well. But I'd say I don't want to be like this is a competition. I read more. That was going to come out wrong. So I was trying to figure out how to word it. I read like a lot, but you are also a reader. So we both picked like a couple of books that we find comfy and cozy. So the definition typically of like a cozy read, it's something that conveys warmth and comfort and always has a happy ending. Typically, when you go to somebody and say, I want a cozy book, that's what you would describe. What we're talking about are books that make us feel specifically cozy and are comfort reads, maybe kind of like we were talking about how we had comfort watches, which is something we just. These are books that we maybe return to multiple times, and we always get enjoyment out of them every time because they just make us feel happy and take us out of whatever it is, whether it's like sickness or just not wanting to think about the world around us or whatever. It takes us out of that. So we have a couple. Kelly, do you want to do one of yours first?
Yeah, I would say I think you're probably a more avid reader than I am. I think you probably have a bigger library than I do. I read when I come across something or when something is suggested to me. I don't go out of my way. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I mean, back when we had bookstores, real bookstores, I would frequent them and I would pull things off the shelf and such. But I think one of mine, and it's kind of, it was really the first fantasy book I ever read was The Hobbit. And back in the 80s and during the emergence of D&D and also that time where I met up with a lot of my peers that became my family down the road, any gaming group worth their salt, there was at least a couple, or if not all of them, had read The Hobbit, or and Lord of the Rings, and it was, I've gone back and I've read it a few times, especially after the movies came out years ago, and there's just something about whenever I read The Hobbit, it's more of I get the sentimental feelings of all the time that I had spent with my friends gaming all those years. And it kind of, it just kind of brings those feelings back. And, that good feeling that memories that you cherish kind of bring when you're, because you don't always, sometimes you need something to kind of spike or jog your memory a bit, and reading can do that. Like smells, certain smells can trigger memories, and reading, I think for me does kind of does the same. And The Hobbit is definitely one of mine. What about you?
I was going to say real quick, if you think about it, you were talking about the correlation of The Hobbit and like D&D groups and stuff. The Hobbits are going on they're an adventuring party.
Mm-hmm.
I said it. Full with my full chest. They are an adventuring party, 100%. So I can definitely see that there. That now that I think about it, the amount of people that are into both really overlap. So makes sense.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely where the trope of the traditional adventuring party kind of originated from. So.
Mm-hmm. My first one I think is going to be no shock to anyone that knows me, and it is Alice in Wonderland. I really like when they combine Alice in Wonderland and Alice Through the Looking Glass, because you do find them actually combined in a lot of prints, and though that it's always been like one of my absolute favorites of all time. I have reread it more times than I can count. I have multiple versions of it. I have like illustrated versions and just like the book itself. I know a lot of people have very strong feelings sometimes about, the author there. I completely understand. And if you look him up, he sounds kind of creepy, but no proof that Lewis Carroll did or did not do things that people think he may have. So I am going to separate the artist from the work and continue to let it be very cozy. It's just, if you think about it at the end of the day, it's a young girl using her imagination and, finding where she fits in and, finding her place and what that means, which is probably what I really needed at the age that I found it. So it's always been one that I have read and reread, and because the outcome too. I think that's the other thing about what makes a comfort read is you already know the outcome, so you know what to expect. So you're not like kind of waylaid or really upset by something that happens. Honestly, I don't know.
That is a good one. I've never read it. I've of course seen, the animated, I think Disney, and some of the more modern versions of the series. Another one of mine is a short story from Harlan Ellison called Jefty is 5. And it's, it's a story basically about these two friends. And as one kind of goes through the normal aging process, his friend doesn't. And it's kind of this story of like being able to hold on essentially to your youth and to like it's really interesting the way Harlan writes this book, because it's you're kind of looking at it from the other friend, and he comes back home and he sees like his Jefty is still 5 years old and I'm 8 years old, and that whole like he goes off to high school, Jefty's still 5. He eventually becomes a young adult, and he ends up coming back and he opens up a business and he starts working, and he decides he wants to look in on his friend, and his parents are well aware that their son is not right, and they kind of are leery of him because it's like our child stopped aging after 5 years old, but it's weird because like the kid is still in tune with all the things of his childhood. So like one time his friend comes over and they're going to go to the movies, and Jeffy's underneath the porch in his little clubhouse, and he's listening to the radio. And so his friend, crawls down there and is like, "Hey, what are you doing?" He's like, "I'm listening to Captain Midnight and on the radio." And he thinks to himself, that program hasn't been on in 20 years. What do you mean? And he turns his radio on and it's there. They're listening to it. And, there's a lot of other things that happen. I've always really kind of held on to looking at things as kind of childlike. This story really kind of hit home for me when I first read it. And my mom would often say, as I got older, as a teenager, and I was buying, here I am, 16, 17, buying Transformers and buying, G.I. Joe figures and things like that, things that would be more appropriate for someone 11, 12, 13, but I'm spending, my money on that. And my mom said, and I don't remember in what way or she said something to the effect of I never gave up, or I didn't give up my childlike way of thinking or way of looking at things or whatever, and I mean, if you walk into my house and you see my living room, I mean, it's nerdy, but I mean, it's like comics, statues, figures. I mean, it's all the things that I love and care about, and that I've collected over so many years. And that story, Jeff D is 5, is one of those stories that just kind of, Harlan's written a lot, and I've read a lot of his stuff, but it kind of runs the gambit. It's not, it's there's some stories like I love I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream, but I wouldn't say that's a comfort read. It's a very harsh look at the human condition. And I've read it a couple of times, but I wouldn't call it a comfort read. This, to me, is one of his stories that I find a lot of comfort in. So
to me, it sounds like, and I don't know at what point, and this would have been like so long ago, way before our parents, our parents' parents, our parents' parents' parents. But I don't know at what point they started looking at kids and said, "You got to toss this toy away. You're a grown up now." You know what I'm saying? Like, why? As I sit here and color in my coloring book, I don't know why there are things that they're like deemed. That story sounds interesting to me. I don't believe I've ever read it, but as you were telling me about it, it seems vaguely familiar, and maybe it's been somebody's told me about it before, or maybe I read something about it. But I love the idea of that, and that how it can like be very personal. And I think that's the other thing about a comfort read or even a comfort watch, is that everybody's is different. Like a lot of us will have things in common and similar, but they're all different because of how they fit into our life and what they mean to us exactly. So.
Yeah.
One of my other ones actually has been out for, I think it's 10 years. So I have the anniversary edition in my hand. I'm trying to see. I don't want to say she's not a well-known author, because she's an amazing following, but she's not like one that if you walk into the bookstore, you just immediately know who she is. I just dropped one of the things off my shelf on the floor and I don't know where it went. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I dropped a squishy Cheshire cat, and I just knew if I forgot about it when we would end the podcast, I'd stand up and like fall on it.
Yeah.
So, the book that I'm going to tell you guys about is called Cupcakes, Trinkets, and Other Deadly Magic by Megan Sienna Deutsch. She is fantastic. She is one of those that still interacts with all her fans. Because she just has the ability to do that. It was originally written, copyrighted 2013. So it's not a super old book, but it's also like not like brand new. I love it so much. I think I've read it like 5 times now. It is a magical book. It is like there are werewolves and witches and vampires and all of those things. There is a little bit of a love thing in it, but it also deals with like figuring out who you are as a young adult, not like a teenager, but like an actual, like I'm a fully fledged adult, but I'm trying to figure out where I fit in the world. And I'm trying to be my own person. It deals with grief. It deals with family dissection. Just a lot of things, but in an otherworldly way. And she has just such a way of writing it that you want to know the rest of the story, and you start loving the characters where you're like you can identify yourself in like one or more characters. Also, it doesn't hurt that the main character owns a cupcake shop, and all of the cupcakes are named like Charm in a Cup, Sunshine in a Cup. What else? Thrill in a Cup, things like that. And Megan has recipes for each of the cupcakes that she mentions in the story. Like that's better. I love food, love cupcakes, so that's fantastic. I know this book won't be for everyone, but I just love it, and I love Megan. I know not every author can interact with, their fans, but the fact that she's kind of in a position where she still can do that and she still feels comfortable enough to do that, I think says a lot about her readers, but also it's just like really heartwarming. So I think maybe that's another reason why I love the entire series that I was a part of. It's called the Dowser series, but the book one is the one that I haven't reread, I guess, about 5 times. And every time I just like it a little bit more and a little bit more. And I mean, I love the book, but I'm saying I find something else about it that I really just really find fascinating. So
Yeah.
I recommend it if any of the things I have said sound like something that you're interested in, for sure. Do you have any more?
I do. It's kind of it's a Lovecraft story called Rats in the Walls, and
Aiden loves that one.
And it's one of those ones that I remember reading back again, like when I was a teenager, and had just kind of been introduced to Lovecraft. It was a little, paperback book, and I just remember that it was really and truthfully a really scary kind of story that it stuck with me. And again, comfort-wise, I don't know why it's comforting to read that. And I think I kind of you gave me for either my birthday or for Christmas the anthology of Lovecraft, and I remember rereading it again and getting really unnerved by the story. But at the same time, it's like some people, like I love horror movies, and some people like being scared. Some people like that kind of makes my skin itch or skin crawl. That's what this story completely does. And it's like I kind of go back to that when I first read it as a teenager, you know, sitting in my room, sitting at my little desk with my little lamp and you know, my D&D book sitting on. I had this desk basically that my mom had. They were going to throw it out, and I was like, well, I could use a desk in my room to work at. And so it was just this little wooden kind of nondescript desk. But
is it like the one you used to have in your office at the shop?
no, that was another desk she had. This one, I really wish I hadn't got rid of it because it just had character. And so I can remember just sitting there reading that little paperback by the light on my desk, and you know, it gives me that kind of comfort feeling I had of being, I guess, being home. You know,
nostalgia.
And nostalgia, yeah. So, I mean, there are a couple of other Lovecraft stories, but the Rats in the Wall really stands out to me, and it really being the first story that I had read of his. Because again, I mean, we had a bookstore here in town back in the day, and the lady who co-owned it lived next door, Mrs. Pridgeon, and she was a really nice. She was a good neighbor. She was a nice lady. In fact, she was when I started getting into D&D, and they came out with the first core books, the Monster Manual and the DM's Guide and the Player's Handbook, the first one. She bought the Player's Handbook for me because she knew that me and some of the neighborhood kids were playing, and so she bought it for me, and was really, that's another good memory. But yeah, the Rats in the
Wall. And that says a lot too, because I know like where you and I grew up when D&D first came out, it was not perceived very well at all. So that's like even more special.
Well, like the 80s was the Satanic Panic that was kind of happened. I don't remember what specific year in the 80s. I want to say it was sometimes in the early or maybe mid 80s that it kind of cropped up, because D&D had kind of gotten its foothold and was kind of not super mainstream, but enough people knew about it and played it. And it's one of those things that even my parents were a little, wasn't really sure, but when we played, we always played at my house. We played in my room. My mom would come in and see my friends. My friends, it wasn't like we huddled in this dark room with our cloaks on with candles.
Right.
In my room playing, and mom would make snacks, and it was, if you watch E.T., E.T. has a nice little homage to D&D as the kids are playing D&D at the kitchen table, and Dee Wallace is the mom, and she's talking to him. That's the kind of D&D we played,
That's pretty much how all D&D campaigns were going. It's just for whatever reason, a lot of people in the South, where we're from, did not think so.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times, exactly. You I mean, that's all it was. I mean, I'm not, there are there are exceptions to the rules, and there were some things that kind of happened, and this was, but it wasn't as rampant as the people that were trying to get it, banned, or people that were just adamantly that it was all bad. And, and I remember having conversations with my mom and her, she still had concerns, but, the fact that we played it at the house and she got to witness and see us, I think Easter. But I told her at one point in time, I was like, look, is this game dangerous? No, it's not dangerous.
No.
Now, under certain circumstances, if you had somebody that's unhinged, somebody that's not, somebody that doesn't have a good grasp of reality, no, I wouldn't let them play this. Not unless there was supervision, or if somebody, because sometimes D&D can be therapeutic. It can help. But if somebody is, not medicated and has, some sort of deficiency, and they're not, it can be dangerous. It's like the same thing as an arsonist. You wouldn't set a can of gasoline in a match near them. It's
right.
Essentially, I tried to explain to her that the game was harmless, and under most normal circumstances, it's just a game, and that's all it is. Do people get kind of wrapped up in their character? Yeah, they can. They can sometimes. And, if that's the case, then, as other gamers, which I never experienced anybody getting really, I mean, yeah, everybody gets upset if their character dies, but it's more like, well, okay, well, back to the drawing board. And it kind of goes like that. I never got to see anybody completely just lose it when their character died. But
I honestly think, and thankfully haven't either. I have heard some horror stories, and I agree with you. I think there's, all it takes though, Kate and I are having a conversation about something totally different, but like talking about how all it takes is one bad story, like one bad seed, to basically cause a mass panic, really. I mean, we were talking about Halloween candy in particular, and how it's that time of year where I have to remind everyone that ain't nobody giving your kid THC weed gummies, because trust me, they expensive. But
yeah,
I have to remind people of this every year, and I'm like, it's not happening. It's really not happening. But that actually comes from a story that did happen. I think it was in the 90s. Late 80s, 90s, but the guy put something in pixie sticks. But the sadness of the story, I won't go in depth. We're not a true crime podcast, but the sadness of the story, he was trying to unalive his own children, and some neighborhood children got caught in the crossfire. But that one story has led people since that time to be like, you have to check your kid's candy. Like it really created a panic. So I do understand how things like satanic panic and like your mom being a little concerned happening, because all it takes is, like you said, there's bad that pops up in everything, and you can't control those people. You just don't invite them to be part of the group. But that one bad story is all it takes. It's all it takes.
Yeah, I know the case that you're talking about. It's an urban legend, but it's very sad.
It really happened.
Yeah, I know what happened. It's very sad, and it's one of those things that, parents just need to be very. I mean, you're going to take your kid out trick or treating. Just be smart about it, and that's all it takes. And
if you're gonna let your kid play a new game, D&D video game, whatever, like do the research that you can, like that kind of thing. Yeah, that's
it. That's it exactly. It takes just do your parenting. Do what you're supposed to do as a parent. Yeah. But. Yeah, as far as things like that go, I mean, I never really had a whole lot of problems with, being able to game and gaming with my friends. I never really ran into any, nobody came up to me and said, you're going to go to hell. You're playing D&D. You're being a witch, warlock, whatever. And I probably would have if I had kind of advertised it, but I never really talked about it outside of my friends. I still went to church on Sundays with my parents, but I never struck up a conversation with any of my church friends about D&D, and did talk about it in presence of my parents' friends. Because I knew better. I was like, no one's gonna get it.
Right.
I always thought my parents. I didn't know the word progressive, but I would have said
I was about to say your parents
my
really
parents are
were.
very progressive. They have
Yeah,
open mind.
they really
Um,
did.
and so, uh, but when even before I moved out, I think when I turned 16, I kind of quit going to church because it was boring and I didn't like it. And of course, really by the time I turned 18, I completely left going to church. And it wasn't because I didn't want to be a Christian anymore. I just found the whole ordeal very boring and a waste of time. And so,
Listen, church can be very boring. Like, I'm not
and
gonna
yeah, it you know, my mom kept going. My dad even kind of quit going too. It's kind of a thing that I don't really know why. I mean, but uh, mom kind of held on to it for a while, and eventually she kind of quit going as well. But uh, it had a lot to do with the fact that I mean they sent me to a private Christian school, and that was how I spent you know fourth through 12th grade.
lie.
I'd had it with religion by
Yeah.
that time. So
I
when
bet my husband was sent to a private Catholic school, so he commiserates with you. He's like, no,
yeah, it's I was sent. I mean, this was a fundamentalist Christian school, and so
oh,
it was like super. You know, you could girls couldn't wear pants. They had to
mm-hmm,
wear dresses. They wore culottes to play volleyball.
mm-hmm.
You know, of course,
Rules
there's
about
no.
cutting your hair. Yeah.
Yeah, I had to have my hair cut a certain way, which you know just drove me nuts. I was all the time getting detentions for, hair infractions because I would let it grow out to the point where I started getting detentions. And that was my cue to, okay, well, I've got to go get a haircut. They would give me a few verbal warnings and eventually they would say, hey, here's your detention because you haven't gotten your haircut. And I was like, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. Let me get right on that. Yeah, it was, girls and boys, different PE areas, different, you know, I mean, we could sit together at lunch, but we couldn't sit very close to each other. It's just really a bunch of just crazy nonsense. So, and, uh, yeah, I wouldn't recommend it to anybody, and, uh, but yeah, I think that as far as like going back and finding things that are comforting, uh, especially the world we live in now, is extremely important. Um,
I don't think it's I don't think it's really any surprise that a lot of us, our comfort things are either from, you know, major parts of our life, like teenage years or younger.
yeah,
I really think it's no surprise. It's because it's some sort of like reaction, dopamine, something that you can connect it to that like just really makes you feel better at the end of the day. Like, did you have any more books?
not really. I mean, I could mention an honorable mention of the Dragonlance series.
Mm-hmm.
Again, those books came out in the 80s. They were, TSR franchised characters and stories. And again, very much in the trope of The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings, where you have a group of heroes come together from various backgrounds to defeat the evil goddess Tarkisas, and those stories again were like everybody had read them in all the D&D circles of groups that I ran with. Everybody had their favorite characters. Again, it's a comforting remembrance of a time long past, and some of the best times that I can think of, next to having my business, having my shop for those years, having my shop and these, the time spent around the gaming table with my friends are extremely important, or something that I hold I hold in reverence, because those were, I can think back to, conversations had at the end of a gaming session, or the arguments about just silly minutia of, obscure facts about this, that, and the other. Not harsh arguing, but friendly gaming banter about opinions on this, that, or the other. And that's, like you were saying, that's kind of the comforting part that we kind of hold on to. And there's a lot of books on my shelf. I have just a hodgepodge of things that either people gave me or books that I bought. Somewhere along my move, when I moved from my old house to this house, some of them got misplaced. I think they may have gotten thrown out by accident, which I hate. But
yeah, we've all been there, though.
But there's no real theme. I mean, a lot of it's fantasy, some of it's sci-fi. I mean, some of it's like, nonfiction stuff, historical. But I had a friend growing up. His name was Buster, and went over to his house for the first time, and he had a bookshelf that was built by his granddad, who was a really great carpenter. And this bookshelf was slam full of fantasy, sci-fi books. He was the first person I met outside of really you that was what I would call an avid reader, somebody who read on, didn't just read here or there, but that was part of their day-to-day life.
Yeah, I read pretty much daily. I mean, not every day, but pretty much every day.
I was extremely godsmacked by his bookshelf, or his collection, and they had talked about it, and they had bragged about it, but actually seeing it, I was like, this is crazy. And I mean, he would go and buy books every weekend, or any time, would go to Walden Books in Dothan.
Oh, I love Walden.
Hit up the fantasy sci-fi section, and that's just, it was amazing. And thinking about even that is one of those kind of like, that's really cool. That's one of the things I remember about him. Unfortunately, he passed away a few years ago, and it's part of my one of my D&D groups. He and my friend Mike and my friend Ryder, we were kind of a gaming group for just the four of us for a few years. Branched out. But yeah, I mean, he was the first person, one of my friends that I was like, I thought I read. I don't read compared to him.
But I will say, I think any reader is a reader. Like,
yeah,
I do get really frustrated when somebody's like, "Oh, well, I read 120 books. You only read 20. You're not a reader." Bullshit. If you read in any capacity, you are a reader. I'm not one of those people. Yeah, I
see it a lot on like social media and stuff.
It's not a race.
No, it's not. It's not. We should all be happy that the other one is reading something,
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, that was the only reason my mom bought comics, or the first time when I was 9 years old. and I was in the drugstore with her because I was sick with my cold or asthma or whatever it was I had, and I saw a comic book spinner rack for the first time, and I pulled a couple of comics off that struck my fancy and went up and asked her, and she said, "Are you going to read them?" And I was like, "Yeah, I will." And she goes, "Okay." And I mean, I did. I mean, sometimes I would sit at the kitchen table and read out loud while she's, and that was one of the things she said. She goes, "Anytime you want a comic, if we're somewhere where they're at, you can get one, or you can get a couple because they were, 35 cents at the time."
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, even when I was growing up, they were like only a cup. I mean, it was a little bit older but they were only like $1. Like they weren't.
Yeah.
It wasn't something like super expensive.
No, and even books. I remember buying. I think this was one of those. I choose your own adventure.
Oh yes, I love
where,
those.
Those were even like 95 cents.
Oh yeah.
Paperback, and you would read to a certain point, and then it would give you this choice: do you want to go down the cavern and explore, or do you want to go to the left and check out the crypt, turn to page whatever?
Yeah.
And I had a ton of those. TSR came out with them too, and because they were fun. I mean, you could cheat if you wanted to ruin it, but the whole fun was like, oh man, I just got eaten. Well, the only thing was
that turn back to page blah blah blah.
Right. The only thing bad was that once you kind of read the whole thing through, it was kind of useless. I mean, you wouldn't want to go back and reread it because you already know how to go through the book.
Yeah, unless you were doing the option where you were like, I'm going to pick different options this time.
Yeah.
But
I mean, one of the things we would do is we would just trade. It was like, hey, I've got this.
That's what we did as well.
Yeah. It was like, oh yeah, I'll give you this one. This is one that you hadn't read, and we do that.
Basically.
But those were fun, and I mean, reading was one of the things as a kid I really wasn't that great at, but comics opened up a whole world for me as far as wanting to read, wanting to learn, wanted to know, and why, I the way I kind of think that, looking at the way autism and ADHD is so more refined, that we understand that so much better now, that it really makes me believe, well, I was undiagnosed. Of course, they didn't have that back then. There was not, the word autism was, it
was only for like severe cases, like your non-verbal heavy STEM.
Yeah.
I mean, the only people that they were looking at, they didn't realize there was a whole other group of us that were actively just like the rest, just in a different manner.
High functioning is kind of the word for it, basically, and that's what it was. I mean, I kind of hate the fact that not being able to take, like, I know Adderall is like good, but I mean it could be abused. But like I've heard Julian talk about when he was using it, how well it helped him absorb and be able to read and to, kind of really soak up what he's reading. It takes so much for me to do that, and I have to kind of go back and reread things sometimes, even to this day. And I don't know what it is. I mean, it's the fact that my attention is hard to stay focused sometimes, even on things that I enjoy. So, but I can't take, even if I wanted to, I couldn't take Adderall today because my heart, would be like, no.
I never have, but I didn't get my diagnosis until I was already in my 30s, and I was like, well, I've gone this long. And somebody's like, how do you read? And I'm like, I have the kind of ADHD where my brain is what's hyperactive. So I need some sort of constant stimulation, and I find stimulation in books. and I hyper focus. I'm a hyper focused ADHD person, so I can really hyper focus. The problem is that causes book burnout, especially when you're reading like a series. Like if I find out there's a series and there's already like 6 books out, oh, I'm probably gonna devour them. Like as I've been getting older, I've been trying to like space them and do better with that so that I don't hit like a reading slump. But yeah. I was gonna mention though, one of the things that I've always loved about your mom, and I think makes her add it to her list of progressiveness, is she did something with you that anytime somebody comes to me and is like, how do you help your child read? How do you get your child to read? Which I'm sure people have heard this story before too, is I encourage people to give their kids comics or graphic novels, which is actually how you and I ended up becoming friends, like all those years ago, 12, 13 years ago now. Because Caden loved to read but was really struggling. And I looked at Jerry and I said, I wonder if I went and got him like a bunch of comics, or I took him and said, you can pick what you want, what do you like? And I found out that you had your store in our town, and I just showed up one day with Caden and was like, do you have anything for young readers? And you said, I don't have much right now, but I can get it. And that was that. So your mom doing that then, I think, is like one of the most amazing things, because that is, for anyone that's listening, if you have a child that is not a strong reader, whether it's dyslexia, attention, whatever, I highly encourage graphic novels for young readers. Marvel makes a set that is fantastic, because it allows them to look at the picture, sound out the word, and actually understand and compute what they're reading. So, and your story of how you got into comics is kind of the same as mine. Mine was, I was sick at the drugstore. You know, we came from small town, so small town drugstore with the Turner magazine Turner rack. I bought, my first adventure was 1 strawberry shortcake and 1 Spider-Man for like $1 a piece. And my mom was like, are you gonna read them? And then she was like, wait, this is the kid that's a reader. But I've always loved that story about your mom, because I feel like it just adds to the comfy cozy of how progressive and how caring and understanding she was. It melts my heart, and I wish I could have known her.
I think I know definitely that she would have liked you. She would have been friends with you. I mean, she loved all of my friends, and that was one of the things that was kind of sad when I finally moved out in '95, when I bought my home there on Scott Drive. That was one of the things that I kind of felt sad about, was my mom. Not only was I had moved out, I was 24 at the time. A lot of folks had long since left, but I was kind of like riding the whole, hey, I've got somebody to do my laundry. I got my mom cooks for me. The whole spiel, like, why move out? And I've got my room, and I had both bedrooms. I had taken over both bedrooms. One had kind of turned into a gaming lounge with like a couple of couches and a gaming table, and it's where me and my friends hung out. And all of my friends would come through the front door, talk to my mom, and go back to my room. That was just, we had one of those clear glass screen doors, that was, really real fancy. It could be cold outside. You could just open the door and have all the light, and it wouldn't let the heat or the cold out. And my mom could see whoever was at the door, and she'd wave them in. And that was the one thing I was kind of sad about when I moved. But I mean, I was ready to move out, and my dad was like, if you're going to live here, I don't want you to rent a place. That's like throwing money out the window. We'll find you a house. And so we went down that whole route, and I learned how to get a mortgage and do all that stuff.
Which honestly I think is brilliant. I mean, if you have parents that have that capability, I think it's fantastic for sure.
My parents just kind of were were practical when it came to things, and it made sense to me. I was like, I mean, yeah, I mean, I just get a mortgage and pay for something that's going to be mine one day, and not pay rent and have to deal with there's bonuses to renting,
Oh yeah, for
and
sure.
there's also downfalls, because like if something breaks, you have to go through a whole song and dance to come get somebody else to fix it, but it's on their dime, it's not
Right.
yours.
It's not. Yeah.
But it was really good, and I when my mom passed away, I may have talked about this before, but just to reiterate how my friends loved my mom, and they were all, I mean, the service was packed, and there were people standing, and like the back 2 rows were all of my friends, and even my friend Doug, who was a Satanist. I mean, I mean, I don't know if he was a traditional Satanist, but that's what he claimed, and
That's what he identified in as at the time.
yeah, and my other friend was a Norse pagan, and then he was there too, and to me that just says a lot about my friends. They were family in a lot of sense. But I wouldn't be, I don't think, the person I am today if it wasn't for my mom and her openness to go, hey, this is something, if you read this, that's good, that's a good thing. She never questioned comics. She wasn't leery of them. She was like, if you're going to read this, okay, I'll support that.
Right.
I mean, whenever we went to some place when I was a little kid, of course, when you take a kid shopping, you're a mom, the kid's going to find something he wants, a toy or whatever. And I learned
a stuffed pink penis. That's what he found today, by the way. Just interjecting that. Not even joking. I said no. I said no, not with my money. That's what I said, actually.
What did he find?
A stuffed pink penis. I'll send you the picture. It's actually quite funny. We laughed for like 15 minutes. It was funny. And I'm not saying no because I'm a funny dud mom. I said no, not with my money.
Right, right.
Here? I mean, my kid's 18. I have to remind everyone, my kid is officially 18 now. If you want to buy stuff with penis, it's funny. It's funny. And it had a smile on it. That made it even better.
Yeah, I get that.
But I was like, yeah, not. Yes, but yes, I know what you mean. They still ask for things. Yes, they do. Mm-hmm.
But I knew that, always, like getting a toy or getting a Star Wars figure or something was I had to roll the dice. But if I wanted a comic, that was a sure thing. That was a sure bet. I could get a couple of comics, and that's what I went for. I mean, I didn't really, of course there was occasionally I would if there was a Star Wars display for figures, I might say, hey, can I? And my mom would get it because she knows I was a big Star Wars fan too. And, I was also the baby. I was the last kid. I was a kid that they weren't supposed to have.
Right.
So, of course, I got spoiled. So, and it happens. I wore that badge with honor. My sister and my brother would always make comments, and I was like, somebody's jealous, and just I was that bratty kid. But I wasn't a bad kid. I mean, that was one of the things that my parents also, as a teenager, turned 16 and like I was over at my friend Daryl's. This was a Friday night, and we were eating junk food and playing the ColecoVision and playing games. And my friend Billy was over there, and Billy was going to spend the night with Daryl, and Daryl was like, "Hey, Kelly, why don't you spend the night too, and we could just stay up all night and see who could get the highest score." And Billy was like, it's like 10 o'clock. Can you? I was like, hang on. I got on the phone and I called my mom. And I was like, hey, I'm going to stay at Daryl's tonight, and we're going to stay and play video games and eat junk food. My mom was like, okay, have fun. And I hung up. Daryl was like, did it work? I was like, yeah, of course. And Billy's like, my mom would freak out if I called her. I said, my mom's up. She's a night owl. I knew she would say yes, because I never gave them any worry. It's like, and that's how it was, growing up. I mean, I was being left alone at age 11 or maybe 12 on the weekends.
When they would go to the beach.
They would go to the beach because my parents had a beach house, so they would go there every weekend. And eventually, like, Mom was having a hard enough time trying to find sitters. She would get, the last time she got one of her friends to stay in, she was nice, but, I told my mom, look, don't get anybody to stay with me. I can handle things here. Penny's here. If there's a problem, I can call her. She's just across the bypass. My friends are going to come over. We're going to game. We're not going to burn the house down.
Right.
And finally, she was like, convinced my dad. She's like, look, he can handle himself. Penny's here, whatever. And so from 12 to 16, pretty much, that's how I spent my weekends. Was just.
I hate to say it was a different time, because I know people roll their eyes when people say that, but it really was in comparison to, like, I would not be leaving an 11 or 12-year-old, and I didn't even when Caden was 11 or 12, but I wouldn't leave an 11 or 12-year-old.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, if I had kids, it really would depend on how they were. But I mean, like myself, I knew how to cook. I knew how to use an oven. I even knew how to do laundry. I mean,
I was staying at home by myself at 11 and 12 as well. So, like,
I was taught those things by my mom, basically to, like, be able to be self-sufficient. I mean,
you're supposed to do as a mom. You're supposed to teach your children how to be self-sufficient.
I mean, I wanted, like, some shirts washed at one point in time because they were my favorite shirts, and I was like, Mom, can you wash these? And she was like, no, but I can teach you how to do it. And she was like, and that's all. I mean, 10 years old, she go into the utility room and she shows me how to measure the stuff and what to put it on and what to turn and what. Boom, there you go. I just do and usually from that point I started doing my own laundry, just because I would get out and play and get dirty and do whatever. Yep. But it is a different time. I mean, the 70s and the 80s were different. I mean, I don't know if I had kids, I don't know if I would be comfortable leaving them alone at that age either, mainly because, like we just mentioned, it is a different time, and it's a lot easier to get into trouble, I think.
I think so too. I think it's not only easier to get in trouble, but I think it's easier to accidentally find yourself in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's necessarily that there's more bad that's happening now than there was then. I think it has to do with the fact of we can hear about, for example, I live in the Czech Republic. When we were growing up, do you remember ever really hearing much from the other side of the world unless it was like a really, really big deal?
I mean, no, before the internet, newspaper was, and then your nightly, your local and your local news, and then like your national news programs that came on. Yeah, but
even then they weren't saying like everything. They were just being major high points, right?
Yeah.
And now we can hear about something that happened in another part of the world within seconds of it literally happening. Which kind of changes your viewpoint on the world. It makes you think the whole world is horrible, and you're like, oh, no, these things have been happening at this capacity. I mean, there are some things that are happening at a higher capacity than prior, but I'm just saying overall, I think that's what it is. It's like, obviously, we have the podcast because of the internet, so there's a good thing. We have digital books, ebooks. I'm very thankful for because of the internet. Like, I could list off a lot of good things that would make us comfy and cozy. There's a lot of bad things. So it's like, that's why we have to find things that are nostalgic, comfy, cozy. I'm looking for all of the wonderful words because that's how we keep the amount of ick and bad that you and I were having a private discussion about before, because we don't want to bombard people with it. But I don't know. I feel like that's why it's kind of a different world. It's because of the fact of you know about it within seconds, literally. That's just my opinion. I'm sure somebody's like, well, actually, and I'm like, listen, I understand. That's just my opinion on why things appear to be so much worse. But
well, yeah, I mean I was talking to my coworker this past week, and while all this stuff coming out about P. Diddy and all of the crazy stuff that was going on with him, and he's under arrest, and he's,
which there are a lot of people that are like, I told you so, I've been telling you guys this since.
Yeah, there's others that are just like in panic mode because they're connected somehow to it, and they know that they're probably going to be, brought in, and they've got all this evidence, all these tapes. And I was just thinking, and I was saying to him, I said, I'm not, nor really have ever been like a huge person that follows or adores like celebrity. I mean, they're actors and actresses that I like their performances, and there's ones that I really don't, but I've never been wrapped up in the idolization of people. And I'm looking at all of these Hollywood people that are just kind of getting rung up and thrown through, and I think, man, you know what, when you fly that close to the sun, you're gonna get burned. And when you do things to people, and you treat people a certain way, and all of this, eventually it's going to come back. And that's what this is. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I can only imagine that there's a lot of stuff going on that we don't know yet. And I think the worst is yet to come. And there may be other people that's going to be, you hear names like Ashton Kutcher, has his name popped up today. I saw, and I'm like, well, I mean, I'm not a, have I seen some of his stuff? Yeah. I mean,
I've always really liked him, and I've liked the charities that he has started and been involved with.
Right.
And though his brother, he actually has I believe their twin brother who has Down syndrome. And so I've always really enjoyed how he talks about, learning about genetics. And I believe that's what he actually went to college to do, is to be a geneticist, so he could learn to find a way to help his brother. But then at the same time, it's like, this goes back to, I was giving a review of a book the other day that I really enjoyed, and I was explaining to the person that it's just trying to prove the point that anyone around you can be the monster. Anyone, literally anyone.
Oh yeah, definitely. And it's the old saying, don't meet your heroes. Everybody's capable. The only exceptions that I will stand for, the only exceptions are Dolly Parton and Keanu Reeves. Unless something comes out, which I seriously doubt. These two people are extremely humble and giving and caring. I mean, they're the only two celebrities that I've, and the late Betty White, you know.
I was going to say Betty White, maybe more. I'm going to say Morgan Freeman.
Morgan Freeman, yep, another one. There are certain celebrities that I look up to, and I'm like, these guys are solid. But of course, I mean, saying that, even still, some shit could hit the fan after the fact, or, you know. But as far as I know, as far as, you know, just in general, these are some celebs,
right?
You know, I can't, and they're all older celebrities. They're not anybody current, you know.
I mean, because still pretty current with a lot of the kids. He's in like Cyberpunk and stuff like that. So
I just don't. I think it's because I just don't really watch a whole lot of like modern TV. I mean, there's certain TV series that I watch or whatever. Like The Boys. I watched the last season of The Boys, the 4th season. But as far as like following seasons or watching a whole lot of current television, it's hard to find stuff that I want to spend my time on. And that, it used to be back in the day, I'd watch shitty B movies, horror movies. Me and Chris Sanders would try to find the worst things at Blockbuster to watch and see who would give up and say, take this, turn the tape off. I can't watch this anymore. But now it's like, I don't have the endurance to do that anymore. So it's like the Stranger Things, like everybody was a big fan of the first few seasons, but I don't care anymore, especially since it takes them 2 years to do a season. And by the time they're doing it, these kids that are supposed to be like high school are going to be in their mid 20s or, you know, it just, I don't know. I just don't care. and that's the thing. Like back in the day, you would have, I'm going to use Star Trek for an example. Like you would have a season of like Voyager was like maybe 30 episodes. And then you would break for like maybe half a year, maybe, you know, to get your next season. And that's reasonable. But when you have to wait 2 years for another season to come out, it's like, that's ridiculous. I'm going to forget what happened. I'm going to have to do a recap. and that's asking too much of me and my time. So, yeah, like people are always telling me, "Oh, you need to watch this or you need to watch that." I'm like, half the time I'll start watching whatever it is they suggest. I get bored with it and I turn on something that I like. We talked about our comfort shows. I'll put on B5 or I'll watch Babylon 5 for the 20th time or you know, start the first season of Farscape over and you know, watch it or whatever. It's like I get more enjoyment out of that than the new stuff because it just takes so long to put out. And streaming services are ridiculous. The pricing that they're going up on, you know.
I had a conversation with somebody today about that.
I mean, if you want to pay for commercial or you don't want to pay for commercials, you're going to pay at least $17, $18. Mm-hmm. If you want the bare bones package, you're going to pay like $6.
Like we're back to paying like if we just pay for cable. Like we have so many different services, we might as well just be paying for cable, is what somebody said recently. I was like, you're not wrong, actually.
I would really like if they were to go back and go, hey, we're going to put all of these packages, we're going to put all these things into one package. It's going to cost you let's just say $60 a month for like Hulu, Disney, blah, blah, blah. No commercials. I would probably go, okay, I may delve into that, you know, then paying.
You know, I was gonna say real quick, I don't know if for you, but for me over here, because I have Disney Plus, obviously creating my account in America, I don't need a VPN to watch it because there's also Disney Plus here. All the Hulu stuff, Stars, all of that, it's all on my Disney Plus. I don't.
Yeah,
it's all there.
The last time I last time I signed up for or last time I reactivated my Disney account, yeah, Hulu and all that was added in there, which I thought was cool. But, you know, again, I just, I don't know if I really want to, you know, I only re-upped my account for like 1 month, only because I wanted to watch Age of Ultron again. And my friend who had it on his media server was messed up, and he couldn't figure out why it was messed up. And I was really jonesing to see the Age of Ultron again, so I re-upped it, and I watched a few other things too. But you know,
we use it enough that I just go ahead and I do the yearly. I pay for the yearly. I won't lie, we were a family that at one point we were sharing it with someone else. It was my account that I was sharing it, but they've really cracked down on that, so we're no longer splitting the yearly fee with someone else.
Well, you and I shared all kind of.
We did. They really got it where you just
back when you were here. I mean, yeah. I had my Netflix and I forgot what other I traded with you, and you gave me like your Amazon or your Stars when that was still.
Yeah, we had a fantastic barter system. Yeah.
You know, sometimes when I'm ordering stuff from Amazon and I go in to put in some information, your name will pop up in your email. Will pop up in my.
Oh, because you used to watch with me. Yeah.
And I was trying to figure that out. I was like, why the hell? And I was thinking, well, maybe Miranda ordered something from here, from my house, and it was.
Yeah.
It was. I thought, oh no, it's because I used your Amazon Prime to watch. And that's all it took was just putting your information. Now, like you said, they monitor all that and they've changed it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
You can't do it.
You can share Amazon Prime and Amazon shipping and stuff. But the way you have to do it is it has to be someone else that is in the household. So like, for example, my American address is currently my mother's address. Yeah. So my mom has her own Amazon account. I can't see anything she's doing, can't see her orders, none of that. But I gave it to her because we technically share an address. So they do allow that, is that you can share it with, so that you can essentially, I guess it's like you could have private, like for me and Jerry, if we were both there, we could have, you know, where he wouldn't see gifts that I might buy, I wouldn't see gifts that buy, that kind of thing. I guess that is cool. But at the same time, it's like, okay, really? You have to be in the same house? Like,
I saw, you were still living here when they built the CVS down here at the bypass or at the intersection, weren't you? You remember the CVS? It's like right across from.
Yeah. It was there. I've been going to it for a long time. Yeah.
I went. Sometimes I'll stop there on my way home and grab like a 2-liter or something because it's just less stress than having to drive over to Publix and go through. Right. I noticed that their Red Box is completely gutted. Red Box doesn't exist. They don't exist anymore. They're bankrupt. And I was like, wow, that means.
And as of last year, do you remember the Netflix? Okay, boys and girls, Netflix used to be, you would go online like a library and say, I want this CD, and then they would mail it to you. It was pretty quick, I would say, even back in the olden days of it.
Yeah.
But you would say, I want this disc. About 2 days later, it would show up at your house. Depending on how much you paid, you could have 1, 2, or 3 discs at a time, and then you returned them. And as you returned one, you get another one, get another one. So did you know that was still in active service until last year?
No, I did not. That's
last year finally they cut it. They ended it. it.
That was one of the first things. I mean, I signed up with Netflix and did that. I think shortly before they actually launched, I guess, having their Netflix streaming service, I guess.
I've had it since 2005, and so it was quite a while before streaming happened.
Yeah. I didn't order like a lot, but I think I started shortly before they did their streaming part of their their business model, which was the whole downfall for Blockbuster and all the other places. Which
Blockbuster was still open for the longest time I moved to Enterprise, and it was fantastic.
Yeah, Ron used to work at the one in Dothan, and we joke about it sometimes. He was like, I was like, that was a Saturday, it was a Friday and Saturday night thing. Like, if we weren't like, we didn't game, like, we gamed every weekend, like either, but there were some like Saturday nights, Chris Andrews and I would be like, okay, well, we're gonna go rent some real trashy beef horror movies, and like Jim and Mark would be like, oh fuck, because like we would take over the living room, TV, and sometimes they would come in there and watch them with us and bitch about how bad the movie was. But that was the whole point. That was the that was the thing that we kind of did. And I, this is when I started, would drink on the weekends, and it was really funny to kind of get shit-faced and just watch some of the just worst B horror movies and just the whole going to Blockbuster and finding, like, hey, Chris, look at this. Check this out. This looks like complete garbage. I can't wait to watch it. And
yes, that's like me right now. I have gotten, you know me. I hate reality television.
I know you're watching the Housewives stuff.
I am. I've been watching. Not only have I been watching Housewives of Salt Lake City and enjoying it, it's my comfort show right now, which sounds so weird to say, but I've also been watching that brand new Secret Wives of Mormon Lives. I have so many thoughts. It will be on the TikTok for anyone that wants to hear them. But listen, just like the B-rate movies, I don't know why, but there's something.
I understand.
Yeah.
You ought to. Danny watches some of that reality crap too.
Oh, he does. He and I talk about it sometimes.
The one that I remember him talking about was something called MILF Manor.
Oh, Love Island is one that he is.
Yeah.
He really likes. He's probably like, guys, don't call me out. But I think he would tell pretty much anybody that. But
he would.
And that's Love Island.
I give him so much crap for that. I'm like, what, but in the same thing, it's like, why he loves crappy B movies, and it's probably because
I used to as well, actually.
Of me and Chris. He would come in there, and then he started kind of finding stuff, and he would bring it in for us to watch, and we would go over to Danny's there for a while, and that's when he had his media server set up, and he would just download some of the worst crap. I remember there was one that was called Wolf Cop, and I remember sitting there watching it, and about 45 minutes into it, I went, how much longer is this? And he was like, I think it's 20 minutes. I was like, that's 20 minutes too long. and just I mean, it's sad that we've lost a lot of these things that we used to have, but I wouldn't say that I'm happy with the current market for streaming services and stuff like that, mainly because it cost, and really and truthfully, like, there for a while when like Netflix was like went up from like $7 to like $10, I was like, there's hardly anything on there to watch. I spend more time looking for something than watching anything. So I canceled Netflix at that point.
I think ours is like $25 because, we have the multiple people can watch at one time so that, Jerry, Caden, and I can all. Yeah, I think it's like $25 a month, which I'm like, oh.
Well, I mean, if you're just getting one streaming service, that's not too bad. But like, my coworker was talking about his streaming bill, and I'm like, God, he's like $60 because he has like all of these streaming services. Like,
we technically only have 3. Disney Plus I pay for yearly. We do have the Netflix, which Jerry actually uses a lot. So and I do as well. So it does get used. And then I have Discovery Plus, but I have the commercial watch one. So I think I only pay like $3.99 a month for. Like that one, I'm like, oh, whatever.
I've only got Paramount, and I think it's $5.99. I think it's about to go up.
Yeah.
And I only have it so that I can watch all the Star Trek stuff when I'm
right.
doing that. And occasionally I will reactivate my Disney account when I want to watch something there. But most of the time I just watch whatever Jesse has his server up, so I just get on that and watch that stuff and not have to worry about paying for anything. If a movie comes out that I want to watch, like there's a vampire flick that came out a few months back called Abigail, about this little girl vampire that was really interesting, and I watched it. I didn't, he finally got it on there, and I got a chance to watch it. That's how I watched the last season of The Boys. And I know that that's not, pirating. I used to feel guilty about it, watching pirated stuff. Now I don't fucking care. It's like, whatever.
I think everybody has to do what they have to do to survive. And if you disagree with it, like, you have to look the other way, right? Like, that's my opinion on it.
I look at it like, does it take some money out of some folks' wallet? Maybe. I don't know. I mean,
yes and no. I mean,
yeah, I mean, it probably does, but as much as
I just don't pirate books. That's where I do draw the line there, because I know that one, it absolutely takes money from the author. I don't pirate music anymore. I used to, like, to the point that, like, back in the day, Napster, I was one of the people that got a cease and desist letter from Napster.
I think, like, movies is the only thing that, like, when my buddy set up his media server, he was like, hey, download this program, put this info in, and you can stream anything from my library. Right. I was like, well, that's cool. And so, I mean, that's because, like, I miss going to the theater, and I have gone, when there's a movie coming out that I want to see. But, like, there's all stuff that just comes out that I forget about. Like, oh, that's already been in the theaters and it's gone. Well, fuck. What am I going to, well, it'll be on my friend's media server in a couple of months. I'll just check it out whenever it pops up on the new category.
Exactly.
So I just gave up really caring about the whole, like you said, you got to kind of pick your battles. And I mean, there's so much, like, in Hollywood that is just bad and stuff going on there. I'm not trying to, like, say, oh, well, me watching pirated movies it's not right. I'll admit it. It's not the right thing to do, but I just don't care enough to not, because I want to watch that, and I don't want to go where I can't go rent it. I don't want to order a streaming service just to watch this movie. I'm not going to pay, you know what I'm saying? I'm rambling.
It's okay. Do you have anything else? So I'll give an honorable mention to one book/story real quick. That is kind of like your H.P. Lovecraft, where people are going to be like, that's not cozy. It is to me. So that's The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe.
I see.
I love this. I've always loved Edgar Allan Poe. He's always been one of my favorite authors. My favorite rendition of it is actually done by The Simpsons on Treehouse of Horror. It's fantastic. I've already said my shows that are currently, like, comforting. They're trash reality shows that I know are out of proportion, not real, but I am enjoying them, and I think that's what matters, right? That's the big deal.
It is. I give Danny crap and kind of, gave you a little crap a minute ago, but I watched the first 10 seasons of Survivor and Big Brother, just like everybody else did at that time period where it was hot and it was the thing to watch. But I grew up watching The Real World from MTV. It was I think that's a little different to some regards, but I watched most of the seasons throughout the 90s. just to see what was going on, see what was happening. But, today reality TV has been so produced, and, it's the shows like I used to watch, American Pickers and
I love that one.
Pawn Stars or whatever. And you find out later that a lot of this stuff is already kind of manufactured. They kind of set it up and
like they've already done the wheeling and dealing, and it's like, this is,
this is just for show. And once you kind of see that, you kind of see the, you pull back the curtain and you see the wizard back there doing this stuff, and it's like, oh, so some of it is kind of staged. It's not completely reality, but eventually when I got rid of cable, when I moved to my current house, and I just got rid of cable because I'm not paying $60-$70 extra. I just want high-speed internet so I can game. I quit just quit cold turkey watching all those shows. But I remember why I watched them, because it was just interesting, I think those guys on American Pictures robbed a lot of folks. But
probably.
It's lowballed the crap out of these people and went and sold, their fines for a lot.
Which is one of those like double-edged swords, because they were here to make money too. But
I'm like, there's honorable ways to make money, unless you're just going to rip somebody off.
They're doing well.
Yeah, that's true. But I as far as like comforting books, the ones I listed, I think, are the closest ones. I mean, it was hard for me to sit and think about, like, I came up with those few pretty much quickly, but I was sitting thinking about the rest, and everything I've read. I'm like, there's only a few that I sat down. Honorable mention wise, I might have the Elric saga, because I have reread the Elric saga, at least 4 or 5 times. And I really enjoy, again, it's kind of that whole reminiscent of that time period when I first read Elric in the 80s, heavily into D&D, getting into that, the whole, the whole spiel, the anti-hero Elric.
Right.
But yeah, that's it for me.
Well, I want to say thank you to everybody that listened to our nostalgia talk, our comfy cozy talk, our things that didn't make us comfy. That's why we go to the comfy talk. I know we ask this every time, and you really only have like the one social media, but where are you comfortable with people finding you if they apply?
I've got my Instagram, I guess. You can message people on Instagram.
You can.
Tinsel 2814. If you find it, you're gonna see a Green Lantern as my profile picture, and then most of my posts are all comic book oriented. Sometimes I'll post other things, but mainly it's comic book centric. But you have
sometimes your art when you're doing it.
Yeah, sometimes. I mean, my art. Sometimes I'll post that. But yeah, I mean, if people want to contact or say, whatever, that's where they can find me.
I'm on Instagram and TikTok at Mom's a Nerd. I post a lot of daily life in a village, travel, my kid saying weird Gen Z slang, and explaining weird Gen Z slang, and things like that. So you can follow me there. We are planning, make no promises, but we have some plans coming up for spooky season. It's mine and Kelly's collected favorite season. So we have some new episodes that should be coming your way. So look forward to those. And we're so thankful that you stuck around with us today. Please message us and tell us what you are finding comfy and cozy and nostalgic.
Yes.